Hello, buddy. You're on the Somar channel. Enjoy watching. I'm sitting in a bar drinking beer. Someone comes up behind me and taps me on the shoulder. It turned out to be a dude from school. We decided to have a little chat and share with each other what was going on, despite the fact that we didn't communicate at all during school. Later in one of the stories, he mentions that for a while he slept with a girl whom, by pure chance, I know very well. And I'm aware that she didn't have anyone before graduation. I say, "Oh, that's my close friend. Let's dial her up, let her come over. We hang out here all the time." The man turned pale. I experienced the pleasure of the fear in his eyes. When I lived with my dad, I had a secret stash of money. At some point, I saved up a decent amount. I was saving up for an Xbox 360 that was about to be released, and decided to recalculate all my savings once again. I'm counting, and I realized that about $20 are missing. Fortunately, there was a program on my computer that took a photo from a webcam every 10 seconds. When I left the house, it turned on and filmed everything that was happening in the room. I decided to check the footage and saw one of our family members come to me, go straight to the hiding place and take money from there. At the next family dinner, I decided to get to him in front of everyone. When I confronted him, he replied that I was lying, and in the end, no one believed me. Well, I had to throw a printed webcam photo on the table. That night, I ate the most delicious macaroni and cheese in my life. Before the advent of desktop publishing systems, when I was in my 20s, I worked as an advertising designer for a department store. One day, our boss left for a day and left our colleague in charge, a grumpy and tired woman who had been working in the store for a very long time. I brought her another advertisement for approval. She looked at it, got to the bottom of some absolutely insignificant detail, and asked to redo it. Realizing that she was just trying to show her power, I went back to my place and started working on something else. But I just put that advertisement aside. A few hours later, I went to her again and showed her the same advertisement. She looked her over and replied, "Well, that's another thing." The advertisement was approved. I never told her that it was the same version as the first time. I often fly for work. In 90% of cases, I leave my car in a cheap parking lot 10 to 15 minutes walk from the airport for $14 per day. A couple of times when I didn't have much time before departure, I left my car in the garage 5 minutes away for $24 per day if I'm not mistaken. My trips usually last 2 to 3 days, so it's a small expense. One time my boss said that it would be cheaper for the company, which he owns, if I used a parking lot farther away, which costs $11 per day, and from there I would take the bus. This is still a pain in time. The next shot shows me walking down from the cheap airport parking lot to the garage and seeing how I'm in a reserved seat, which starts at $40 per day. My boss's Jeep is parked. And since the seat is reserved, it means that he planned everything in advance, i.e., there was no such thing that he was late for the plane and had to park expensive. I decided to put my business card under his windshield wiper. Since then, he has never complained about my parking expenses, although I have not even told him anything. A colleague once told me and another colleague a story about how he was slowed down by the cops. The story was like this. He tells in detail that they say once he stopped at an empty gas station to buy a drink and there were cops. He waved to the cops, was polite, bought a drink and left. After 30 meters, the same cops catch up with him and ask him to slow down at the curb. They said they smelled weed from him and asked him to get out of the car. He came out and asked if they could smell it now that he was standing right in front of them, to which they replied, "No, but the smell was definitely from you." They then asked if they could search the car, to which he reluctantly agreed, and said they wouldn't find anything anyway. The first cop started moving the car. The second cop, seeing that my colleague was nervous, said he needed to calm down, to which the colleague replied, "I'm not worried, I'm angry. You got to me not because you smelled weed, but because I have a shaved head and tattoos all over my body." In the end, the cops found nothing and left him alone. So what's the lie? Yes, because it was my story. It really happened to me many, many months ago, and I've already told this story to people from work. Damn, even the quote was mine, but in my case it was long hair and tattoos. The funny thing is that my second colleague and I quickly realized that he was telling me my own story and started looking at each other. In the end, he started to buy it out, because he finished it somehow very quickly. And then I never thought of her again. We didn't say anything to anyone, because it already felt like he was ashamed. Plus, if the others found out that it would be impossible for him to get rid of the lagoon stigma.
I must say right away that the story is wildly petty, but still. When I was 7, my friend Eloise thought she was the queen of the animal kingdom. She knew everything about all the animals that had ever existed and pretended that she had been watching Animal Planet since the very first day of her birth. I always suspected that something was wrong because she couldn't possibly know that much. So the next time we were poking around in the sandbox and looking for some bugs, I asked her, "Oh, listen, what do you know about insert some kind of made-up name for a non-existent bug?" And then she starts telling me that she adores these beetles, starts remembering various facts, telling me about their diet and habitat. I decided not to interrupt her right away and let her talk. When she finished, I told her that she had been telling me about the fictional bug for the last 5 minutes. She got so sick that she started stuttering and looking at the floor, after which she abruptly switched to another topic. It was so nice to expose her. Take it, Eloise. I knew that all your knowledge about nature is one big deception.
I am a librarian, and I'm very proud of this story. This happened when I was in charge of the music and film department. Anyway, one day a man comes in with his son and asks where to find Eminem CDs. I took it to the shelf and pointed to the only CD we had. After that, my colleague called me and I went to another department. Then I look, this guy's coming out, and I feel that something is wrong. Maybe it was the way he looked. I think we should check that disc. When I return, there is no disc. I check his reader's card, and it's empty. A dude showed up with his 8-year-old son at a public library and stole a fucking Eminem CD that he could listen to for free. Well, we didn't have any cameras, and I didn't have any evidence, so I decided not to do anything. Several weeks pass. That little boy comes to us again, this time with his sister. They are 8 and 10 years old, and they go back to the discs. I keep an eye on them, but I don't interfere, because I didn't want them to stop going to the library because of their mad father. But that story kept bothering me. So, after a few months, I decided to try something. Since I still had the barcode of that stolen disc, I decided to add it to the dad's reader card, as if he had borrowed it. I thought that in the worst case, they would say that they didn't take anything, and I would just apologize for the mistake. A few days pass, Dad comes to us again. He took some more discs, returned some. Before I leave, I stop him and say, "And don't forget about the Eminem CD, it should also be returned." Oh, how sweet was the confusion on his face. He didn't respond at the time, but returned a few days later with that CD. To be honest, I don't care about Eminem. I could have easily replaced that disc, but on principle, I wanted to finish the job. It was one of my greatest victories.
I was 9 or 10. My friends and I are still fans of dolls and took our favorite dolls to visit each other. One time, when I was visiting a friend, I noticed that a couple of my dolls had disappeared. I immediately realized that my friend had hidden them in her doll limo. I was 100% sure, but I didn't show it right away. And just as I was leaving, I decided to say, "Oh, I think you accidentally took something of mine." My friend blushed, opened the limo, and took out my dolls. Gotcha. Another time, she stole clothes from my dolls. I had to pull them back while she was in the bathroom. After that, I didn't play with her anymore.